Chair. Attorney Bledsoe, you know, you've been around a long time with the NAACP, working very closely in that arena.
Yes,
you know,
Madam
one
Chair.
thing I think is so important, and could you just concisely share with this body the importance of not creating racial divide?
Well, Madam Chair, that is such an incredible point, question, because what's occurring in our country, and particularly in our state, we see a rise of hate crimes and antagonism between our students. This morning we had a news conference with K through 12 and college students talking about this being part of adding to the divide. You see the N-word being directed towards students in K through 12 and school districts doing nothing about it to respond to that. You see students down at Texas State talking about the concerns that they have and the disrespect they're receiving on campus and how the campus is not responding. You know, ironically, I'd met with the students in the Department of Justice to try to address some issues there, but then they fired the department individuals who were handling it 3 weeks after we met with them. So you understand it's a real problem, and what this says is that you don't matter. You have no rights, because if right now, as we sit here now, the current map, Madam Chair, as 73% of the seats in Congress are controlled by white voters, 73%. If this proposal goes through, if you just move the 4 districts that are in the letter, that means 84% would be controlled by white voters. And if you add 5, as the president has indicated, that would mean 87%. So whites are 40% of the population, already controlled 73% of the seats. And we're talking about moving it to 84, 87%. That, if that doesn't tell brown people and black people that they don't matter, that really kind of does. And so you just have to look at the numbers and see what that means if we go through with what we're doing.
So, Attorney Bledsoe, you can agree and tell this committee that creating a racial divide hurts us, weakens us as Texans.
There's no question about that, because people are empowered. We look at South Lake, we look at Lubbock, we look at Slayton, we look at Grand Prairie. We look even here in Austin, where we've had incidents like that, where people don't matter anymore. The rise of hate is really and truly there.
So as leaders, you would agree that we should be the example and stand up to this and say we want fairness and accessibility to everyone. We as leaders should be the example to not only just Texans, but the greater America. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that, and I think that dovetails into what Dr. Valenzuela said earlier, because what's happening is people are coming into our house telling us to have division in our house, and they're telling you how to run your house and make people angry and hate each other down here when they're somewhere else dealing with their issues and their people running the show. So it's gosh awful wrong, Madam Chair. I think you really hit the nail on the head.
And would you agree that by the White House stepping its arms in our community, dividing our community, and then he goes off into the sunset while we're fighting each other and have created a divide that could be unrepairable? Would you agree with that?
That's absolutely true. He doesn't have to deal with it. He doesn't have to see it. And all those people are going to be crying and they're going to be upset. And I think the acrimony, you know, one of the reasons that we've done in this country is we've tried to bring everybody in. Our country has become an example around the world of how a country should be run, but now that's being torn down. And so one of the reasons why that's done, all the experts will tell you, is so that all people buy into the government that you have, right? And so we want people to be supportive of the government. We don't want people to be antagonistic towards the government and potentially disruptive towards that government. And that buy-in will be lost, because you're telling us we have no role. We don't have a vote. We don't have representation. So that means we're outsiders, and that can mean some very dangerous things.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Manuel, for a purpose.
To ask a few questions of Ms. Angela, please.
Gentlemen, recognize question witnesses.
It's Doctor. Ms. Venezuela, thank you so much. I'm really asking this because I love your passion on this, and we both said the same word, apartheid. What I want to know is, has there ever, and I know I'm going to ask some questions that might seem a little asinine, but I promise that's not the point of it. Has there ever been a time in just this state that Latinos or Hispanics have been represented by someone who was white and they did not have an option to be able to represent themselves?
Who was right?
Who was white?
Oh. Who was white and didn't have an opportunity?
Like it was a majority Hispanic district, and somehow you weren't represented by someone who looked like you, who spoke like you, who was from the community. Because I know at one point in time for Black people, we could only be represented by someone who was white. And so I know how.
I think maybe Gary can answer.
Well, no,
that.
I'm really more asking it from the point of view where you were saying from LULAC and you're saying people being played, because I'm trying to see is what is it that from the Latino experience, the Hispanic experience of what it feels like to not have your voice heard in a room when you're talking. If someone else wants to answer it, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking about like sort of, layers and systems of oppression,
Right.
And so, one layer is that you're present, but you're not even heard, right? You testify and it just evaporates into the wind, right? It's dismissiveness is a very common word, and it feels like a lack of respect. We're not being treated respectfully. Those are the words that come up a lot in the community. Respect, dignity, a right to a life of dignity. It's at that level of social relationships, how we talk to each other and work together. And it's a complicated state because of a very deep history of racial discrimination against Latinos. And if I can be frank here, I want to mention the black-white binary. It's killing us. I mean, because it's like, there's more to this country than black. I'm a professor in the area of race and ethnicity at UT Austin. And that's an issue that means that oftentimes people understand race as black and white, when a more textured analysis is that race is a social construct and historical.
Right, it's all culture.
Well, it's historical, right? And so even if you're not technically a race, which is itself inaccurate, there's only ultimately one race, the human race, right? But these are words that come in with slavery, right? With the consolidation of slavery, with the U.S. Census is making race every day by using these terms that then are just widely circulated and somehow interpreted, right? As complex as this is, such that my point is that we're a race from a sociological perspective as Latinos and Mexican Americans, and we feel ourselves like a race. We are a race because we are treated as other. But again, it's fluid. It doesn't have to be that way, right? It doesn't have to be that way anywhere. We can just sort of align as people that love each other. Why not? Why can't we have black and brown dialogues on policy? We formed an organization to promote that, right? And that's inclusive of Asians, Indigenous, queer, Latino. I mean, let me tell you, y'all are messing up big time by focusing on the wrong issues. Because in doing that, you have blind spots like infrastructure that you are not addressing. Y'all are screwing up big time. I'm sorry to say, not you individually. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that when your attention is on these sets of issues that have to do ostensibly with culture, with trans youth, with gender affirming care. I mean, God. We have an ecological crisis now. We have an infrastructural crisis. It's hard not to understand that as weapons of mass distraction. That's what they are, to keep us from focusing on other things. We get focused on immigration and education.
Well, no, I just kind of want to stick to that part, but I'm gonna, if it's okay, I want to ask that same question, but for you, I want to add, because I know there's something else that I'm trying to also see is, what does, of course, the representation, not having it, but not having that representation, how has that negatively affected the community and how other people have seen you all if you are not able to have communities of interest, or you're not able to have districts that look like
Yes, and
people that
it's very
represent?
demoralizing. I get phone calls on, a lot about different communities where we have a majority in a pocket in a community that have no representation on school board. That's going around Texas now. That's usually most of the cases that we take on when we go into places like Kerrville, where we have Latinos in every part of the state, but they absolutely have no representation. So they're calling LULAC. Because the first thing that I know, when you have issues in your community, go to your elected official. Go to your city council, go to your county. But how do you go there if it's a white person who doesn't care about you? If it's someone, we have little fights over in small towns in Texas where we're going over someone getting, when you get permission from the city to be able to rezone. And so a lot of discrimination is going on in a rezoning effort where, a wealthy ranch owner can put as many campers on his land as he wants, but the Latino down the block cannot. So that's going on now. Even with the way the state is set up as it is now, I get phone calls all the day about discrimination cases, and there has been an uptick since the election of that president across the state. So what you're talking about, how it feels, that's what the Latino community is going through now, and it's demoralizing. You feel like you can't get anything done. You have no trust. And con mucho taco, they don't vote. Why are they not going to vote? Because why would they?
Yeah.
If they have representation at the city council, it's been our fight for the single-member district lawsuits, to empower our people and our communities to be able to have seats at this table. That fight hasn't ended. That fight still needs to happen in many of our communities across the state. So to the answer to your question is, it's very demoralizing that we can do as much as we can, contribute as much as this economy that we can, but we don't have representation on water boards, on school boards, and city councils across the state. And it shouldn't be that way. We need single-member districts in small rural areas, especially. It is. And like I said, we've got a history of voter suppression. When people ask people why Latinos don't vote, well, try voting in a little town called Uvalde. Try running for office in Frio County and see what happens to you. So what's going on here is a complete attack against the Latino community. It's demoralizing. Even, we feel like in San Antonio, we have a congressional district. We're a little bit better off than most people across the state because at least we have Castro. At least we have Gina Ortiz Jones that we can go to. At least we have Tommy Calvert that we can go and talk to and get some results. But what about all these other little counties across the state and even in some parts of South Texas where we don't have representation? This has been historic. That's why LULAC was founded to begin with, was to continue to gain back that political power.
Okay, thank you so much. And lastly to you, Mr. Bledsoe, we live in a state that has the highest percentage of black people, African Americans in this country. And the representation doesn't show, and with you being with the NAACP, and what I don't think most people truly understand about the NAACP is it started because of mass lynchings of black people. The statistics were 2 black people would die every week from lynchings, which is why this organization was created, to try to protect even when we didn't have voting rights. Can you explain how that is affecting our community at the thought of losing representation when we already are underrepresented?
That's such an important statement and question. And let me just say that one of the ironies is that the national NAACP was made by lynchings in Texas. Mm-hmm. Many of those lynchings occurred in Texas, but there's a book called The Lynching of Jesse Washington and the Making of the NAACP that details the 1916 lynching in Waco that occurred in real time. It was the first time there was live footage, and the New York Times wrote feature stories about it, and we had actually had a white member of the staff to actually be there in attendance. But that kind of feeling of alienation has dissipated some over the years, and now it's all coming back. What's occurring in recent times is really something that is designed and intended to make people feel like they're outsiders, that this is not yours. The whole idea that kind of started with the Tea Party thing before, take our country back, as if others don't have a share in the country, and that when the Constitution, when Barbara Jordan said, we the people didn't include me, well, that's a big concern. And so in our community, when we see attempts like this, it really generates some real animosity towards what's happening. Voters are very sophisticated. They understand exactly what's going on. You don't have to really explain it to them. And the level of let's just say, the level of being upset within the African American community is huge. It's you look on social media, it's kind of like when you develop those ideas of being able to have this system of communication where people communicate with each other. And you see it in Dallas, you see it in Houston, you see it in the rural areas. And so we've got people that are just upset, and they've been inundating us with calls. We've had town halls on this, and they've been in participation at the town halls. All the organizations, even some that are not really civil rights type organizations, but you find that the organizations in the black community are all upset because they understand what this means. Because see, when you look at the whole what's actually intended with this, and the rights that are going to be in jeopardy, and you look at what's actually going to occur if this is being able to be achieved, you have to be very frightened, because right now that representation of African Americans and Latinos is what is now saving this country. And so that is kind of a bulwark saving the country from itself, because as you said, like Dr. Valenzuela said, people being played. And because there's no reason for us to even be here right now. There's no reason to be here.
Can I interject? Because I just want to get to one other point, because you said something, and it brings me to something which is important, I guess, for my young mind, is we don't have any maps right now, so we don't know what any of this is going to look like. And for me, and I want to know if this is your opinion of well, is this seems a lot like redlining, where all of a sudden communities of interest were completely separated, and then all of a sudden you were like, I wonder why this poor side of a black community is just poor and desolate, and then it gives you the right to call them ghetto or lazy, they don't do this, but you cut them off from every source of income that they traditionally have had. And I'm wondering if you see that as the same.
I think that's actually a brilliant point, because that's what it is. And that's pretty much what Professor Katz said in the beginning, because that's what the letter is telling the legislature to do. Go and find where they are, and you have to move them. You have to move them so they can't elect their person of choice. So that's clearly redlining. And so you look at the map and see what seats you can take. You come up with this mythical idea calling opportunity districts coalition districts, when, like, number one, coalition districts are legal, they're not illegal. But number two, all those districts in the letter, they are opportunity districts. 9, 18, and 29 have been held by courts to be opportunity districts. And the 33rd was actually created by a court. They created by a 3-judge panel of 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat that created the 33rd. Okay, and the other thing that I want to say about that is everything is so ridiculous, is that the process that Senator Huffman testified to about what occurred during the last process showed that what occurred was that they said they drew the maps race blind. And then they sent the maps to Ken Paxton to make sure they complied with the Voting Rights Act. So black people and brown people are nowhere to be found in that process, and the legislative record shows that they had no impact on the actual outcome and changes in the map.